guys, welcome to my video and thank you for joining me today. This is part one of a little series I'm going to start where kind of a collation, if that's a word, of all the things I wish I'd have known about travelling in a camper van before going. So this is part one, and please stay tuned for part two, which hopefully is coming up soon, and maybe part three if I don't cover everything. So this Campervan 101 is just kind of based on my own experience, kind of as like something I would like kind of talk to my friend about if they were also planning a trip, and learning from the many mistakes that we made. And specifically here I'm going to be talking about New Zealand because that's where we are right now, but I think a lot of these tips can apply to anywhere where you're living in a van in any country. So first things first, where to start. So if you want to live in a camper van, normally you have to buy a camper van. We're here for 3 months, so we did have the option to rent, but looking at the prices, they were going to cost a few £1,000s. So we decided that buying would be the best option and selling it at the end of our trip. Of course, this is a little bit stressful because, which is in the period where we are now, because you know, you actually have to sell the car in your house and it all has to line it up and you have to find the right buyer, and then when we go to Australia we have to do this all again. So it can be a bit stressful, but you do save a lot of money because in theory, unless something really dramatic happens, like, you know, hopefully we don't get another pandemic, then you're pretty much selling like for like, and if you're really lucky you're technically not spending any money on the camper van because you're going to be selling it at the end. And even if you do lose a bit of money because, you know, times change, season changes, prices change, you're still most likely spending less than you would at rent at home, especially if you were living in London like I was. So it all kind of works out in the end. One thing you can always guarantee is that travellers are always going to be coming. There's going to be times when there's more and there's going to be times when there's less, but people are always going to be coming into New Zealand or whatever country you're in. So you're always going to, people who live here are always going to be on the lookout of buying a camper van or a car, whatever you're selling. So the market's, you know, generally pretty good. It's a bit of a rotating door in my experience. In my experience, if you're a traveller, the best place to start is Facebook. I'm going to list in the description below kind of the top Facebook groups I use, but there's so many out there. I always kind of stick to the ones that have like 50,000 people in because they're always a little bit more trustworthy, and you're just going to, you know, be in contact with more people that way. But there's always so many posts every day, people selling their camper vans, looking for camper vans, and that is the first place to start if you're looking to buy a camper van, and also if you're selling a camper van. This also includes specific camper van groups and also backpacker groups. People are always posting on there too. Next thing is that you're going to need to know what you're looking for. If you're like me, I'd never bought a car before, let alone a camper van, so there was a few things that you had to look for and be aware of, especially if you're New Zealand, and these specifics can really vary depending on what country you're in. So one of the most important, in the UK it's called an MOT. I actually don't even know what that stands for, but in New Zealand it's called a WOOF, like a dog, which basically stands for Warrant of Fitness. And this is the yearly or every 2 years, you know, that check when you put your car into the mechanic and they check for things. It's like a legal requirement you have to pay for. There's always something wrong and you have to like pay more for. But yeah, it's when you go to the mechanic, they give you a certificate that the car's roadworthy, that thing. In my experience, I would always go for a car or a van that recently had its WOOF or its MOT, just because then you know that nothing's wrong with it. We bought one and it had an MOT, and the next car that we buy we're going to pay for like an early MOT, just so that you know that when you're on the road it's in like the best condition it can be in. But it also, you kind of want to look at the timings of these. It could have 6 months left, and does that mean if you're traveling for 6 months you have to put the WOOF in? Have to be a bit of aware of what you want, what your time wise, what works for you. But I would always recommend getting a camper van with an up-to-date WOOF. Another thing that's specific to New Zealand is the self-contained regulations. I don't think it's like this in Australia, but in New Zealand we have a little blue sticker on the back of our car that means it's self-contained for 2 people. It lasts for like several years, but it basically means that you have a list of requirements and it's been checked, and that allows you to stay at all the free camping spots, which we talk about later, around New Zealand. Without this blue thing you can be fined up to $2,200 per time they like find out you don't have certification. So it's not really worth it. I would just get it self-contained. And the things that you would have is like, you need a toilet, which is just like a decoration because it's disgusting. I would not use a toilet in here. But you have to have a toilet. You have to have like 2 water tanks, like wastewater and clean water. I think like a fire extinguisher, a sink, a bin, like things like that they check. And hopefully you always should buy a van. If you're planning on traveling around New Zealand as cheap as possible, you should definitely buy a van that already has its self-contained certification. You can stay in New Zealand without the self-contained sticker, but you generally have to pay for the campsite, so it really depends on like what works for you, but just like knowing it exists is really important, because I just didn't know that exists when I got here. The next big thing you want to do before even like starting buying any is research, and just spend so much time looking around what's available. It's on Facebook, so it's pretty easy, you know, when you're planning for the trip, if you're on the train, you know, if you're going to work, if you're just, you know, killing some time on social media, checking these Facebook groups, you know, they just come up on your feed. I don't know if anyone ever checks Facebook anymore. I literally only use it to check campervans, but just find out what's out there, find out what's a good price, and if you come along across something that really works for you, and you know, so maybe somebody's leaving New Zealand that works the same time you're entering New Zealand, you know, it's just good to know what's out there and just start reaching out to people. Research is also really good in finding out what your own kind of requirements are. So a major one of these is, do you want a short wheelbase or a long wheelbase? Now the only difference is that a long wheelbase is longer. I think it's about 1 meter or half a meter longer, but it makes a big difference. So we have a short wheelbase and we've been here 3 months, but when we go to Australia we're going to have a long wheelbase, and that kind of means it gives you more space, however the van's set up, like whether that's in front of the bed or behind it, to have a kitchen inside, just have a bit more space. Sometimes it has like a higher roof, and both are fine, but generally the long wheelbase is going to be more expensive because there's more of a car to be there. But yeah, it's just kind of being aware of these kind of things and finding out which one that you want. Another one is a second battery. This is a big one for us because we do not have a second battery in this van, but in the next van we do, because we can't really charge anything in this car at the moment unless we're driving, because it's just gonna like completely destroy the battery otherwise. Whereas in the new van, it's just the second battery is an independent battery, not related to the car, so if we run it out it doesn't matter, apart from we have to buy a new one, but it means you can charge things without having the car on, which is a big bonus. If you just have phones and stuff, like you're fine with just one battery, I think, on the car, because when you're driving you can just charge your phone really quick. But if you have things like, oh, someone's driving past the music, if you're having things like a laptop, camera equipment that has like actual, like, you know, like plug sockets, then you would probably benefit more from a second battery, unless you're going to want to keep going to the library like we do and charging our devices all the time. The next little thing in terms of like looking what you want is kind of linked to the long and short wheelbase, but do you want to stand up in the car? Like, what size car do you want? Because I think people don't really realise the kind of mental space that puts you in living in a car. Like, you know, even if you have like a small apartment like I did, you're used to having space to walk around, and living in a van is very different, and it's about being okay with the amount of space that you have. So there's definitely been times when it's been raining for like a week straight and we have just been stuck in the van, and it all of a sudden it just feels like tiny. It like, you can't go anywhere, you can't do anything, you're just kind of stuck in the van. It was when there's like Auckland was flooding and just the roads were crazy, we could just like watch Netflix in the van all day. So it's like really thinking about, can I do that if the weather's bad? Like, can I live in a space that I can literally not even put my arms straight across? And there are different things for this. Like, we're really lucky we have windows all around, which automatically makes it feel bigger. But you can also have options of like, you can have like a high roof where you do have a bit more space. You can kind of get like the medium ones that a Toyota Commuter has, some of the Toyota Hiaces have, or you can kind of get the old school ones that have a roof that like pop up from like fabric, and I really like those. I think they're really cool, a bit like retro. So it's kind of just looking around, doing your research and finding out what you want. Next really important thing, and kind of like the final thing for this video, is budget. Obviously, whenever you're buying anything, especially like a big investment like a van is, budget is really important, because unless you have an income coming in while you're traveling, if you're like us and you've gone traveling with a set kind of budget, you seriously need to spend a lot of time thinking and budgeting how much can you spend on a van, whilst also having thoughts about how much you need to spend on food, anything else like petrol, diesel, gas, like anything, and really allowing a lot of space for that, because no matter what you say you're going to spend, you're most likely always going to spend more. I'm going to do another video about how much we actually spend during this trip, because we are completely budget. Like we do not spend any money basically that's not necessary. We don't eat out, we don't buy any kind of like crazy foods. I think people would be like really shocked about what we eat every day because it's so like budget. But I'm gonna do another video about that to kind of give everyone an idea of like how we've been doing it. That might help, because I'm really bad at this. Luckily my boyfriend's really good at like budgeting stuff because it's his job, but it takes ages, and this can kind of only be done about like research, like how much is the van going to cost, and also being aware that things can change depending on summer or winter where you're going. Prices can change. Winter is going to be more, well, cheaper, and summer may be more expensive when you're buying a van. So it's really being aware of like fluctuations, changes, because this is a major thing that nearly destroyed our trip. Was the prices of looking at vans when we were at home completely changed when we actually got here, because the prices like skyrocketed because there are so many more tourists now. So the motto of this video is just research, and by research I mean go on Facebook. Like, but I hope this was helpful to anyone. This is part 1 of Campervan 101 and kind of what to do. I'm going to be coming out with a part 2 very soon. In the meantime, please let me know if you have any questions, any advice, any tips in the comments. I'm gonna start posting a lot more regularly. I'm gonna start doing kind of like a more informative video once a week, and then also kind of more of a vlog style once a week as well. I think that would be fun, and even if no one was watching it, I am gonna enjoy it and it's fun to make. And I say I'm gonna like watch back them, and it's nice to have memories, but I literally can't rewatch my stuff. So maybe in 10 years I can like rewatch it and be like, oh, that was nice. Yeah, anyway, I hope you enjoy this video. It's getting really hot in here. I need to open the door. But thank you so much for watching, and typical, please like, subscribe, comment, and follow along for the next video. So thank you.